Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Ecohz webinar on raising the sustainability bar in energy procurement, where we will try to give you a holistic ESG approach to renewables. I am Madeleine Mowinkle, Head of Advisory and Services at Ecohz. Oh, I'm sorry. There was a little lag in the clicking there. And with me today, I have a guest speaker, Steven van Holme, who is the Program Manager at the EKOenergy label, part of the Finnish Nature Conservation Conservancy. Oh, sorry, I forgot that, Steven. You'll correct me later. So, a little bit about Ecohz, for those of you who don't know us that well or need a little refresher. We've guided corporates through the journey to cut emissions for over 20 years. So we're quite old in the game of energy attribute certificates. And we work on all the different ways that corporates can buy renewable energy market-based. Harnessing all that experience, we facilitate companies to cut emissions and reach net zero. So we deliver around 40 terawatt hours of documented renewable energy to our clients on an annual basis. And so we have pioneered many markets, as I mentioned, because we were quite early in this market. So among the first to do IREX in many countries, we were also the first international seller of EcoEnergy in 2013. So we've had a 10-year anniversary already for that. And today we are very proud to say that 10% of the companies that are on CDP's A list, so the best performing companies when it comes to ESG and disclosure, they're clients of Ecohz. And now over to you, Steven. Tell us a little bit about the EcoEnergy label.
Slide went too fast, Madeleine. Yeah, perfect. EcoEnergy, as Madeleine introduced, we are a non-profit eco-label for renewable energy. And we are a third-party verified mark of quality for renewable energy. Renewable megawatt hours can be electricity, gas, heat. But we are not only this mark of quality, we are at the same time a tool to speed up the energy transition, to support nature protection, and to create an additional positive impact. And it's about this additional positive impact that we will talk today. We are indeed an initiative of the nature environmental organizations, and we are based at the Finnish Association for Nature Conservation. I'm also an employee of the Finnish Association for Nature Conservation, but we are a globally active label, as you can see on the slide. We are active in more than 80 countries and counting. Every year we add some countries to the list, and we are available thanks to a network of authorized sellers. And as Madeleine said, indeed in 2013, when we had just launched the label, we are 11 years old, Ecohz was amongst the first, was the first seller, but we have grown a lot since. We are very happy thanks to all these enthusiastic sellers and consumers worldwide. It's clear that our solution finds attraction and it's pragmatic, it works, and every year we can convince more users worldwide. We also work as a tool to raise funds for new renewable energy projects. I will tell more about that. We are very happy that so far we managed to collect 7 million euros to fight energy poverty, and we are recommended by many. But much more about this in the next 20 minutes.
Thank you so much, Steven. And yes, that's why you're here, to talk about the sort of practical experience you have in implementing the different ways to look at sustainability in energy. So now we're going to dive into the subject matter, and that most of you come here for. Just as a little bit of a reminder for everybody, there's an icon on your top right where there's a little question mark. There you can ask all of your questions. We will go through them at the end of the webinar, but feel free throughout the webinar to ask your questions, and we will also share the recording to you by email. All right. So a holistic view of sustainability. What do we actually mean with that when it comes to energy? Traditionally, if you buy energy and it's renewable, that is sort of what you need to do. It was quite binary in a sense. You're not doing anything or you're buying renewable. If you're buying renewable, you're doing the right thing. And what we want to argue here is that the bar has been raised a bit for sort of the minimum of what you should be doing. And I think there are two sort of clear standards we can show to pinpoint this. And one will be familiar to many of you, called the RE100. That is an initiative under the climate group where corporate companies can become members to say, we are pledging to be 100% renewable electricity, hence the RE100. And those were seen as sort of the forefront companies who were pledging to be 100% powered with renewable electricity. They have updated their criteria, which are applicable for 2024 and ongoing. And they now state that the RE100 only recognizes renewable electricity generated from biomass and hydropower that is also sustainable, right? So being renewable as biomass and hydropower is not in itself enough. You need also to make sure that in the case of those specific technologies, that you're also sustainable. RE100 does not actually define exactly what that contains. What do they mean by sustainable? But they recommend that the sustainability is proven through third-party certification. So they kind of lean on, other independent external experts to go and say, okay, what are the criteria to be sustainable, and let them set those standards and do the verification as a third party. So for the EU, it's a bit more specific, but most of you listening in will know that they are creating a lot of legislation on sustainability disclosure and classification. I will show some examples later on, but just a short paragraph here to show you that also to count towards the renewable targets of countries, energy sourced from biomass needs to fulfill sustainability criteria. So again, we know that biomass is renewable, but that is not enough to say that it is sustainable. There are additional criteria to that feedstock. So that is sort of the first sort of baseline on showing that you have to go from renewable to make sure that that renewable also is sustainable. And I want to also point out something, that most renewable energy is also sustainable. So these criteria that we're discussing here will typically exclude like a smaller proportion of the capacity existing, but this is also sort of the minimum bar. And there's ways that we can do more to sort of push a sustainable agenda through energy procurement. And we will look at that now. So I did mention very briefly the EU taxonomy, and I think that is a great framework to try to think about what, how activities can be sustainable. Because the taxonomy has these 6 categories that you see below, 2 of them about climate change, so adaptation and mitigation, 1 on pollution, on water and marine resources, biodiversity, and lastly, circular economy. And to have an activity aligned with the EU taxonomy, you need to have a significant positive contribution to at least 1 of these boxes. And at the same time, you have to do no significant harm on any of the other ones, right? So you can think about, in the case of renewable energy, it almost always will be a positive contribution to climate change mitigation because you're reducing emissions. But on the other hand, you have to make sure that you're not doing any significant harm on biodiversity, for example. Otherwise, it will not be seen as sustainable. So you can use the taxonomy very literally and say, because renewable energy production will be eligible, and then you can see under the criteria if it is taxonomy aligned. But here we mean it more as a framework to try and think about the sustainability of energy. So those are climate, relevant topics, all of the ones in the taxonomy. And if we broaden the view a little bit, the EU has also created the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, the ESRS. I think many of you will recognize them, also if you've been to Ecohz webinars before. And the taxonomy boxes fit perfectly into the environmental part of the ESRS. But the ESRS covers not only environment, they cover also the social aspects and governance aspects, so the whole ESG spectrum. So, here are many categories that are, like all of the categories that are relevant actually when you're talking about sustainability. This is sort of the broader scope that you can look at. How is, the workforce in the value chain of that production? How is the governance, etc. Now, if you think these boxes are a bit hard to work with for a lot of companies, instead of thinking of the topics sort of classified in this manner, they have a more positive approach where they say, hey, we want to contribute to solving problems. What's the kind of impact that we want to do through our procurement, and that we want to also communicate with our actions. And for that, I think the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a really handy tool, because they sort of look at what are the challenges that we have to solve in the world, and where can companies contribute. Well, they can have positive impacts to all of these boxes, and you can think of it the same way that you don't want to have negative impacts on any of the other ones, but it's more sort of specific problems that you can solve, right? And those link actually very nicely to EcoEnergy. And so I will, I want to just mention that if you buy renewable energy, again, you are at least contributing positively to SDG number 7 and number 13, because you are contributing to there being affordable and clean energy, and that in itself is a contribution to climate action. So those are sort of the minimum that you will do buying renewable energy. And often you might be doing more without also knowing it. But we will show you a little bit how those other SDGs also can fit into electricity and renewable energy. And with that, Stephen, I will leave it up to you to sort of tell us a little bit what the EcoEnergy label is doing to promote the different SDGs, and also, these subtopics, the environmental, the social, and the governance. How is EcoEnergy working on those? Okay, so let's start with the environmental part.
There we go. Thanks, Madeleine, for this very nice introduction. I will take it from the Sustainable Development Goals. I mentioned already we are an international eco-label, and the Sustainable Development Goals have as an advantage that they are internationally recognized. They are from the UN, and also companies work with them worldwide. And EcoEnergy builds on them, and we indeed want to be a tool contributing to that, to many of these. Madeleine also mentioned biodiversity as an upcoming topic within more and more companies, which is not surprising. The world or our planet is confronted with multiple crises. The climate crisis is one of them, but the biodiversity crisis is not less. The collapse of biodiversity all around us at a speed unseen. Something needs to be done. And a lot of companies, or increasing a number of companies, are taking action or are including measures to counter the loss of biodiversity. EcoEnergy tries to include that in the renewable energy purchase, because in the end it's all linked. We do that in several ways, but the clearest way is that this is part of our criteria. I said EcoEnergy is a label for megawatt hours. So we are not a label for installations. We are not a label for companies. We are a label for megawatt hours. An EcoEnergy labeled megawatt hour always comes from an installation that we have pre-approved based on our checklist of criteria. Wind and solar are by far the highest volume, or form the highest volume of EcoEnergy, and that's not a surprise. These are also the types of energy that are most easily combinable with nature protection. And regarding wind and solar, we only work with wind and solar that has been produced outside key biodiversity areas. For hydropower, it's not here on the list, but for hydropower, we check, for example, if fish migration upstream and downstream remains possible, and if there is a continuous flow. Biomass and biomethane comes always, eco-energy labeled biomethane always comes from organic residues as a feedstock, and so on. So we have a whole list of criteria, and for every megawatt hour that has the label, you can be sure that this has been pre-approved and afterwards also audited and checked. Sometimes we get as a reaction, yeah, but we do already all this. Yeah, this is okay. We already fulfill with legislation, and in the EU it's already quite strict, or we already fulfill. But EcoEnergy adds this additional layer, multiplying effect, that we do not only check your megawatt hour, but we are also an environmental organization. And by buying or by choosing EcoEnergy, you support us as an environmental organization to focus on these aspects in many possible ways. So in the same way as consumers choosing an ecological product contribute to a company or help a company that produces this, by choosing EcoEnergy, and by choosing a product created by an environmental organization, you support the environmental organization to 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 highlight these aspects in many ways. For example, an increased demand for eco-energy brings us in contact with many other companies that have previously not heard about these topics, and where we can raise these issues. That also, as our volumes grow and as we talk with many companies, we can increase our own knowledge on this aspect, and we can combine and share best practices. We also work as a fundraising tool for nature protection. When you buy eco-energy labeled hydropower, you contribute also to river restoration projects financially. And there's much more, but that's a bit the E aspect, the E of environmental aspect of the ESG policy. I can tell much more about that, but I suggest that we move on, to the social contribution, the S of ESG. EcoEnergy is not only an environmental initiative, but we are also a tool to promote international solidarity in various ways. As I said, we are a global initiative in all aspects and in nature, and this equality and international solidarity is also in our DNA. And one of the most visible things we do is our label works as a fundraising tool for additional renewable energy projects through our climate fund. All consumers contribute at least 10 cents per megawatt hour to the climate fund. We pool these resources and we select each year, sometimes twice per year, new impactful renewable energy projects. And some people say, well, 10 cents is not a lot. Then I say, well, do it. And then they say, well, but we can do more. We would like to do more. That's also possible. You can donate more. You can give more to our climate fund. There is a long list of projects waiting, impactful projects, solar panel. Well, I can maybe directly link them to some of the ESGs, the SDGs. You see them there listed. For example, zero hunger. Many of our solar projects contribute to this zero hunger objective. For example, when we install solar panels for solar powered irrigation in off-grid villages. Solar powered irrigation, where it's also it can also be very efficient from a water management perspective, for example. When we install cooling for farmers, or for fishers, so that they can keep and cool their products and store them longer, can get a better price for them on the market, but also can live from it themselves for a longer time. So the links with zero hunger, the links with good health and sanitation, or good health and well-being. It's obvious when we install or when we finance or fund projects on hospitals, for example, solar panels for hospitals. But it's also in many other ways. A lot of millions of people, hundreds of millions, still light their home by burning things, by burning kerosene, for example. People in many low-income countries live in small areas where it's like when you burn such a light, it's as if someone is constantly smoking next to you. If we can replace that with electric lighting, that it has a direct impact on the health of of millions of people. Yeah, yeah. Of course, not with our small projects, but it's exemplary. Everyone, the more euros we can collect, the more of these projects we can fund. Um, I can give many more examples, but what I want to stress here is, again, it's the same as with the environmental aspect, is this systematic approach. Many companies say, oh, I can give to the niece of my neighbor who lives in Malawi and she also has a nice project. Okay, but that's not very structural. Yeah, that can have a huge social impact, but this systematic approach is missing. And that's what we try to add with EcoEnergy. We have a project, a selection process in place. We learn from each project. We make sure there is reporting, there is feedback, and we also make sure that we learn from each experience to do the next round of projects even more impactful and better. Much more can be told about this, but I'm moving on. The label is, as I said, a tool to promote environmental justice, which is explicitly mentioned by. Sorry, Madeleine, I'm still at the previous slide. Two more words about the previous slide. If you can go back to the previous slide. Yes, environmental justice is in the reports of, or in the planning of many companies. Microsoft is such a company which spends a lot of focus on environmental justice. No, you are too far. We go back to the social aspects. It's
Sorry,
maybe
there's a
changed.
huge lag. I'm still seeing.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, no, well, don't worry.
there
We
we
will see where we end
go.
up. We
Yeah.
will see. Yeah, that's indeed the slide I wanted. To promote environmental justice, Microsoft is such a company that says they want to contribute to environmental justice, and that sees and that has also chosen our climate fund as a tool to deliver this environmental justice. And then the last thing about social contribution is, again, our work as an environmental NGO, that we are part of wider networks, and that in everything we do, it's not about just energy transition, but it's also about a fair energy transition. And the social aspects are really included in all the policy and the advocacy work we do. Yeah, and then we go to the governance part. And that's many things can be said about that also, but I think the direct link with this webinar is that one companies develop an ESG policy and implement their ESG policy. They want it to be on solid ground, and one of the aspects that brings this solid ground is working with a third party verifier, a third party verification, and we want to be such a third party, a solid, trustworthy third party verifier when it comes to megawatt hours. EcoEnergy only works with megawatt hours. We don't have any ambition to enter other sectors or other aspects of of other products. We are always a label, and we will remain a label for megawatt hours, but in that aspect we want to be a trustworthy party. We comply with it ourselves in our own work to make sure that you can rely on us. We work according to international standards. We follow ISO 14024. When we do decision making, we follow the ISO standard for standard setting rules. We have a transparent decision making, which is based on involvement and participation. We all the time welcome input. The more input we can get, the more we can reflect on our own ways of working. Last thing I'm going to say about that is, and then we can move to the questions, is that, again, our role as an environmental organization and as a part of society, we also do what we preach, and we try to not only do this theory, but, for example, we as an organization, we give opportunities to young people to be involved in our work and to experience this renewable energy sector from within. We have hosted more than 90 young volunteers through the European Solidarity Corps from over 20 countries. Through our work, we support a lot of civil society organizations. I mentioned the Climate Fund projects. A lot, these projects or this funding, these projects are not implemented by us. They are implemented by local civil society organizations, local renewable energy associations, and so on. And by strengthening civil society, we also do our contribution to society building and to peace building. Another very concrete example, there is much more, but it's the last I'm going to say. We also, for example, have already for 3 consecutive years donated the largest part of our, or the main chunk of our marketing and campaigning budget to the Renewables for Ukraine campaign, and all these euros have been used to install solar panels in Ukraine. Yeah, and much more, but Madeleine, that's it. It's
Thank
a
you. That
short
is so
one.
much. It's so much already, Stephen. Thank you so much. I think the way you work with the environmental criteria on your label, you are sort of exactly contributing towards this sustainability and no significant harm, as we were talking about. But the additional focus, I think, of the climate fund to create additionality on the environmental side, but also so much on the social side and the whole governance structure around it. This is sort of what we mean to package as a sort of holistic ESG approach. So thank you so much for telling us about that in detail. Just comparing that then to the earlier slide we had on if you have a focus only on SDG 7 and 13, that's already good. Those are the most material sort of topics when talking about energy and procuring that as renewable. But with EcoEnergy, that's a fantastic example of how you can contribute to the climate, people, and systems in a much broader way. I will also mention, since this is an Ecohz webinar, that we, of course, can assist you with EcoEnergy purchases worldwide. We have a portfolio that's spanning almost any country where you can get energy attribute certificates. Obviously, you can use EcoEnergy also with other types of procurement. It doesn't need to be unbundled EACs. So it can be, in green tariffs. So we can sell it also to utilities. We are an authorized seller with EcoEnergy. So Ecohz has sort of the authority and ability to help you all along the way, choosing the right projects, procuring the certificates from us. We take care of the whole cancellation process, the audits with EcoEnergy, etc. And we can also help you communicate your efforts in a way that's suitable for you, and that's also in line with what the label is doing, what the standards are expecting, such as the RE100, the CSRD, and all of the standards we have mentioned today. And upcoming legislation also, you will know that there is a Green Claims Directive coming up that will also dictate and make more stringency around how can these sorts of labels be communicated around. So we are very happy and pleased to welcome any clients who are interested in EcoEnergy and also advisory services around it. We are hopping on to the Q&A session. We only have a few minutes left, so I think we'll have time for just a few. But Stephen, we've looked at all these different SDGs and companies who maybe have some that they are more interested in working towards. Let's say they are, very active in promoting quality education. Is there an avenue for them to sort of use the EcoEnergy label specifically for that goal? How would they go about?
Yeah, thanks for this good question, Madeleine, or question asker in the room. As I said, we are always open for suggestions and participation. So yes, please contact us. I will answer as concrete as possible. We don't have that much time left. For example, if we go through the climate fund, if an organization makes a considerable contribution to the climate fund, I would say minimum 100 gig buyer, or a smaller buyer that makes a higher contribution to the climate fund, we talk about 20,000, 30,000 euro annually or spread over 2 years, also possible. Then that client would say, yeah, we would really like to have a project in schools or support. That's no problem. We will always have projects in schools. But imagine is that in schools in Ivory Coast, then we can include in our call for projects that we encourage educational institutes in Ivory Coast to apply for projects. Yeah, and then all projects always run through the whole process. We do not favor projects because a specific client wants them. They all have to go through the quality control, but we can look specifically for projects. We can also include buyers, or we are happy to include buyers in the selection process and ask them during the selection, why do you like? Do you like that? Do you really think this is a better project than that? In the end, they will not decide. but all input is welcome. So there are various ways of being involved. And yes, we welcome all suggestions, but of course, it has to be in balance with the contribution.
Great, thank you, Stephen. With that, I think we're able to stop exactly on time. So thank you everybody for listening in. You will have the recording by email, and we hope to see you again in our next webinar series, and having a nice summer. And thank you, Stephen, for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation, and thanks for having me. I'm always available for another session.